Here's what I would do if I didn't have a greenhouse and I was itching to get started on starting seeds before spring. So first, let me go ahead and let you know, starting seeds, just in case you don't know this, does not require a greenhouse. You don't have to start seeds in a greenhouse, even though greenhouses look beautiful. Most seeds don't need light to germinate. So maybe just switch over that thought of you don't need a greenhouse to start seeds. But just in case you are wanting to start those seeds and have those seeds grow a little bit bigger before it's time to plant them in the garden, let's get into that. So first thing I would do is, if I did not have a greenhouse, I could just wait until the season is right and sow the seeds directly in the ground when it's time. Like, you get the packet, you flip it over, and you see your zone, and then you know when to plant it, when to harvest it. They're really great on the back of the packets, or information descriptions whenever you order them online. Whenever, they're really good instructions. So you could, number one, just sow the seeds when it's actually time for them to grow in the ground naturally. The other thing you could do, if you don't want to wait, and I know I said if you don't have a greenhouse and you want to get started on those seeds, but you want to have those seeds started before it's time to plant them. So first step, you don't necessarily have to. You can wait until it is actually time to plant them. And a lot of times I do that. Like, there's so many things to do that it is very easy to overwhelm yourself with growing too many seeds too early. And if I were to just be patient and grow the seeds when they actually grow naturally in the garden, I might not overwhelm myself so much. So that's when the garden is full of weeds, because everything is behind and I am not on top of everything, because I'm a great planner and love to do everything. So another thing just to touch on about starting seeds without a greenhouse, again, you don't need a greenhouse, and I'll get to the greenhouse part in just a second, is a heating mat. You don't need light for most seeds for them to germinate, but most seeds that you're going to want to germinate before spring will need heat. That's it. So they've gotten really nice and cleverful, I guess. And they have these little heat mats you could put on a windowsill if you want to be small and not have too many seeds started, taking up too much room in your house or garage or basement. You can just get a little heat mat. You can get creative with an actual human heating mat, but they do make them where they are like waterproof, water resistant, and you can just set it down and plug it in and then have your little seedlings on top on a tray or something so that you can water them and it won't mess up the heat mat. So that's a perfect example that you don't need a greenhouse at all to start seeds. They can go to the ground, they can go on a heat mat, and however you're going to plant them in your seed medium. But if you really want to dive into a DIY little project, this is good for kids too. Now, I do have a greenhouse, so if you want to see our greenhouse, you can just fiddle through YouTube and you'll see our greenhouses. It was, I guess, an add-on to our barn, and it was perfect because it was on the south side of the barn, and I just couldn't not make the most of that opportunity to put a greenhouse on the south side of the barn when we were building it. So it was going to be another part of the barn, and no, we need to make the most of that south-facing wall of the greenhouse. Especially it has stone on the bottom, and it absorbs the heat, and then it releases the heat. It's great. It's awesome. But if I did not have that greenhouse and I really wanted to start not just seeds, because remember, the seeds don't have to have light. When the seeds get big enough and it's still too cold or it's not time to put them out in the garden yet, you need to put them somewhere because they'll get too big and you need to protect them as well. One thing you can do is do a cold frame. It's an old-fashioned 2-ingredient greenhouse, really. And it is just straw bales or hay bales, whatever you can get a hold of, the square ones. And you just turn them on their side, make a little square where the inside, you make a wall, like a little fort, and the short sides are down, and then that way the long side gives you height. And just get an old window or even one of those pieces of plastic. I'm not really sure what they're called, but a lot of folks use them for like see-through type roofing and things like that. It's kind of corrugated a little bit. And you could just put that on anything that you can kind of see through a little bit, or it has some sort of way that the light can get through. You don't want it dark, because then once those seeds do germinate, they are going to want light then. That's when you want something to protect them and something to keep them from being in the dark. So the cold frame might work really well, and that's just the two ingredients, is the straw or hay bales as a little, square fort, and then just an old window or plastic on top. I would probably do a little more solid on top, not like a plastic that's flimsy. I would be a little more rigid in case you have it in the rain or something like that and it won't collapse in. But that will kind of keep some heat in. And again, the south facing, we're in northern hemisphere, so south facing for that is usually better instead of it being on, just say it's the north side of your house or the backyard. It might be okay, but if it was south facing, that's definitely where it's going to absorb that light the longest throughout your daylight, and then be able to absorb the heat and then release the heat during the colder evening and night. So that is the cold frame. Third thing I would do is, if you have a garden, either a garden row or a little garden patch, wherever you plan on planting your garden seeds, what you can do is take the little seedlings when they're just a little bit bigger, and I see farmers do this plenty, but the trick is staying on top of it. And then you plant the little seedling in the ground, and then you cover it with a clear or opaque, maybe white color plastic, so the light is getting through a little bit. And then you just secure it down around your garden plot or your garden row, and then that way it's getting light. And you check on it, of course, make sure it's not getting overheated depending on where you live, and that you can pull any little weeds that are coming up and also water it. A lot of times we kind of put them under the plastic, even the growing plastic, and those little plants are growing, but so are any kind of volunteer weed seeds, that they love that temperature and environment too. So that's the part that when you plant something small or even big, but you just have to stay on top of it, or else it will crowd out your little baby plants. So that was the row cover, or the clear plastic. Now, if you can get away with it in a backyard, we're on a farm, but if I had a backyard to do this and I just had a garden patch, I would probably do like the clear plastic. But if you have like a row that you can do, just say 20, 25 foot long, I would do those. They're like a hoop house, if you've seen those, but they're on micro level. So you can just do a little hoop house along your garden row or your garden patch. And those are online, either seeds or gardening tools. Though, all the big suppliers, even I think big box stores are carrying those kind of things now. They just have this metal hoop about 2-3 foot wide, and you stick it in the ground and you make this like a slinky going down your row of garden, and you put the little plastic on top so it's not laying directly flat on the ground like you can do when they're small. Actually, as they grow bigger, you're not squishing them, you're just leaving them there to like grow if it's flat. But these little hoops are meant to just not lay on it at all, and that way it can have all the room and it can have some sort of structure to be on. And then you can just kind of pull back the plastic and do any watering and weeding for wherever you have your garden, or your garden row or your garden patch. But those are the things I would do if I did not have a greenhouse, and that would make it, maybe just a little more spring in the winter for you if you just can't handle not starting seeds. And a couple of things I do as far as starting seeds, and I've done a few videos I think on this. I love soil blocks. So soil blocks are great to start little seeds, and they're tiny. So you can get so many seeds planted in just this one little block of area. I think it's like a 20 count soil blocker. So, you get 20 or so baby little seedlings whenever they start growing, and they don't take up hardly any room. It's very efficient on space. And I'll probably do another podcast on this, but what I like about it too is there's no waste with it. Like, you're making a pot out of soil, but it's a little cube, and you just plop it in the ground. You don't even need a big tool. Like, you don't have to dig out a hole. You can even just use your finger or a butter knife or something, and it doesn't even have to be very far because they're not very big at all. 3/4 inch maybe, somewhere in that size, very small. And that little baby seedling, you just poke a little hole, plop your little baby seedling in there and squish it all back around. And then that way you can keep up with your little baby seeds and not let them get overgrown. And of course, if you want them to grow a little bit longer and get a little height and a little maturity on them before you plant them out in the garden or your garden patch or your garden row, this is where the little greenhouse type alternatives will work. So just to recap on those, if I did not have a greenhouse and I was starting my seeds and I wanted them to grow a little bit before putting them out into the garden, yes, you could sow the seeds during the natural season for it. That is an option. So don't think I'm trying to get you to grow seeds before the season. Feel free, just like me, I have to tell myself this, to grow in the season. But if you don't want to, or you're trying to get ahead of it, definitely a heat mat to start the seedlings going to germinate. And 2 would be a cold frame, just the 2-ingredient little makeshift greenhouse with straw bales and maybe an old window. And then 3 would be the row cover, the clear plastic or some sort of opaque white color plastic that you can just set on top. Or you can get a little more fancy and have those little row cover hoops, and they're like a little micro caterpillar tunnel going along your garden. So tell me if you have tried to start any seeds early without a greenhouse. What did you start if you did? Or what is the seed that you would really want to start ahead of time and you just haven't done it yet? If you've done one or multiple, let me know, because I might need to try it too. I start too many. I'm guilty a million times of starting way too many seeds, way too early. And you know what? It's okay. I love it, and I learn from it, and I might regret a little bit of it, but in the end, it's all good. So I'll see you next time.